Everything changed in a matter of seconds. You know, the fragile window of an NFL championship can open and slam completely shut before a team even realizes what just happened. Welcome to NFL Nexus. I'm your host, and today we are bringing you an exclusive, incredibly in-depth explainer of one of the most fascinating roster shifts unfolding right in front of our very eyes. But hey, before we dive into the deep end, please make sure you subscribe to the channel, like this explainer, and comment down below on what you thought. Your support honestly means everything to us, and for those of you who want to take it a step further and get even more involved, please consider supporting the channel by becoming a channel member. All right, let's set the stage here. We're looking at the San Francisco 49ers in the summer of 2026. Guys, this isn't just another routine offseason update. Not even close. This is a cinematic look into a franchise that is constantly, agonizingly balancing on the razor's edge of absolute glory and total devastation. To truly understand this current team, you absolutely have to understand the immense, crushing weight of their past failures. We're talking about the ghosts of the Shanahan era, the agonizingly close calls in 2020, the heartbreaking sudden collapse in 2024. The margins in this league are impossibly brutally thin. Literally, a single injury, a single departure in free agency, or just a single rookie stepping onto the practice grass. These are the micro moments. These are the things that decide who ultimately hoists the Lombardi Trophy in February and who is left staring blankly at the ceiling in a dead silent locker room. Today, we are going to meticulously dissect the two distinct shifting faces of this championship contender. On one side, we had the calculated new blood trying to make a name in an unbelievably complex system, and on the other, the violent, unapologetic enforcers returning to reclaim their territory. So let's just dive right into the heavy stuff. What actually happens when a team gets its bully back? It's a massive question. It's a concept that literally changes the very DNA of a football team. Look, in the modern NFL, we know how it goes. Front offices and analysts often obsess over blazing track speed. They obsess over incredibly complex offensive schemes and over the surgical, mathematical precision of the passing game. But if we are being totally honest, deep down in the trenches, in the dark, gritty corners of the locker room when the doors are finally closed, this is still a game of sheer physical intimidation. It is psychological warfare, and it is just masquerading as a sport. Think about it. When a defense loses its physical and emotional anchor, an invisible void is left behind on that field. And opposing offenses, they feel it immediately. The swagger completely diminishes. The linebackers start playing just a half step slower. They're thinking instead of reacting. But when that enforcer walks back through the facility doors, the entire atmosphere shifts in a heartbeat. The air gets noticeably heavier. The hitting out on the practice field gets just a little bit louder. You can literally feel the tension ratcheting up to 10 before the pads even come on. We're about to look at the raw, unfiltered intensity of a reunited defense and the absolute cinematic tension of this current training camp, where every single rep is a violent statement of intent. The training camp crucible. Every single July and August, 32 teams enter this exact same environment. But let me tell you, no two camps ever feel the same. And for the 49ers, this specific camp is an absolute masterclass in contrasting dynamics. I want you to imagine standing right there on the sidelines in Santa Clara. Feel that oppressive summer heat beating down on you. On one hand, you are looking at a roster influx. These are guys dealing with the heavy ghosts of recent heartbreak, utterly desperate to finally summit the mountain after coming so close. On the other hand, you have the new blood arriving. Young, hungry players trying to prove they actually belong in an established, unforgiving hierarchy that doesn't care about what you did in college. And simultaneously, right across the field, you have the enforcers returning, the battered, scarred veterans coming back for another grueling, painful campaign. Guys, this isn't just practice. It is a forging ground. Just listen to the brutal, rhythmic collisions of those 9-on-7 run drills. It's deafening. Watch the offensive line and the defensive front clash like absolute titans in a confined space. Every single repetition, every route run, every gap filled, it is a franchise-altering moment being written in real time. This crucible does one of two things. It either breaks a young player down entirely, exposing their deepest flaws to the coaching staff, or it hardens them into exactly the kind of weapon the team needs for those bitter, freezing winter months. But let's shift our focus to the offensive side of the ball for just a moment, because the dynamic here is wildly different. Look, with new blood comes immense, unavoidable hype. We all see it. The media circus absolutely loves a fresh face. The fans, desperate for that one final piece of the puzzle, they want to crown the next superstar immediately. But inside the building, inside those sterile, quiet walls of the film room, the true leaders know better. Notice the deliberate, calculated restraint shown by the franchise quarterback here. Brock Purdy pumps the brakes. And why? Because it is only day 2 of training camp. I really want you to think about that tiny, crucial detail. Day 2. The pads have barely even popped yet. The complex, trap-laden defensive schemes that they'll face in November haven't even been fully installed. Purdy understands that the initial glowing hype around new offensive weapons can actually be a dangerous, toxic distraction for a team trying to win a Super Bowl. So what does he do? He demands perspective. We all know his processing speed on the field is legendary, but right here, in this moment, we are seeing his processing of the media narrative. He's actively contrasting the loud outside noise with the internal, unwavering discipline that is actually required to survive a brutal 17-game NFL season. It's the ultimate sign of a quarterback who completely refuses to get swept up in the emotion of the summer, choosing instead to focus on the cold, hard, unglamorous reality of the daily work. And that brings us directly to Purdy's actual assessment of the new talent. I want you to read this quote really carefully. He is proving to be a reliable teammate. This is Brock Purdy's completely honest, stripped-down assessment of rookie wide receiver Dejon Stribling. Now, I know what you might be thinking. In a league that is completely obsessed with the spectacular, a league addicted to one-handed acrobatic catches and blazing 40-yard dash times on social media, the word reliable might seem, well, almost boring to an outsider. But you really have to understand the intricacies of Kyle Shanahan's offense to get why this is so huge. This is a system built entirely on the illusion of complexity. Reliable isn't a slight. It is the absolute highest compliment a quarterback can give in this scheme. It means you actually understand the dense, sprawling route tree. It means you hit your precise, exact depth on a dagger concept against a tricky zone coverage. Crucially, it means you block aggressively downfield on outside zone runs when the ball isn't even in your hands. It means the quarterback can trust you completely when the pocket is collapsing, the stadium is absolutely deafening, and it is 3rd and 6 with the entire season on the line. So no, Purdy isn't crowning Stribling a first-ballot Hall of Famer on day 2 of camp. What he is doing is painting a picture of an unproven, yet highly dependable new threat. He is acknowledging that a great first impression has absolutely been made, but he is framing it entirely around the concepts of absolute trust and flawless execution. Okay, so the offense is methodical. We see that. It is highly calculating. It is focusing heavily on reliability, precision, and perspective. But let's flip the coin now, because the second we do, the temperature in the room completely changes. The return of the bully. We are dramatically shifting our focus to the defensive side of the ball right now. And let me tell you, we are leaving that fresh, calculated promise in the dust. Over here, it is about grit. It is about sheer, unadulterated violence on the gridiron. When you are building a true championship-caliber defense, you don't just need players who memorize the playbook and know their assignments. You need players who instill a deeply rooted, highly physical sense of hesitation in the opposing sideline. And I want you to really visualize what that hesitation looks like in real time. It is a 190-pound slot receiver crossing the deep middle of the field, suddenly hearing the rapidly approaching footsteps of a 230-pound enforcer, and instinctively pulling their arms in just a fraction of an inch to protect their ribs. That tiny subconscious micro-hesitation, that is what leads to a dropped pass. It leads to a tipped ball in the air. It leads to a game-changing interception. You need an absolute force of nature to create that level of fear, and that is exactly what has walked back into the facility for this 49ers team. Seriously, let the sheer weight of these words sink in for a second. He's the bully. We got our bully back. I was mad when he left because I know the intensity that he plays with. That incredible quote is directly from lockdown cornerback Lenoir, talking about the highly anticipated return of linebacker Dre Greenlaw. To truly, fully appreciate the gravity of this, you have to know exactly who is speaking. Lenoir is an absolute pit bull on the perimeter. He plays the cornerback position with a nasty, relentlessly combative edge that you rarely see. So if a verified tough guy like Lenoir is out here calling someone else the bully, it honestly tells you everything you could ever need to know about Greenlaw's terrifying presence on the field. There is just so much raw, unfiltered emotion in this statement. Look at the phrasing. I was mad when he left. Guys, this isn't your typical polished, PR-approved corporate athlete speak. This is the unvarnished, gritty truth of a violent NFL locker room. Players know exactly who the true heartbeat of their unit is. Lenoir didn't just casually miss a teammate. He missed the fiery edge. He missed the violent, unyielding bad intentions that Greenlaw brings to every single snap of the football. When Greenlaw departed, a massive piece of the defense's very soul went right out the door with him. So having him back, it doesn't just fill a vacant spot on the depth chart. It restores a massive psychological weapon that the entire defense feeds off of. And if you want to understand exactly why his teammates revere him this much, why they speak about him with that kind of awe, you have to look at the sheer staggering scale of his production. 120. I just want that number to sit with you for a moment. 120 tackles. And listen, this wasn't some one-time fluke fueled by a guy playing desperately for a contract year. No,
Greenlaw posted consecutive 120 tackle campaigns in the 2022 and 2023 seasons, back to back. I really want you to think about the intense biomechanics of an NFL tackle. Think about the immense physical toll it takes on a human body to bring down an elite, incredibly powerful NFL athlete 120 separate times in a single year. We're talking about jaw-rattling, jarring hits in the A-gap against 250-pound running backs. We're talking about having the speed to chase down elusive, lightning-fast receivers in the open field and then the power to put them in the dirt. Doing that back-to-back requires an absolute, borderline reckless disregard for your own personal well-being. It requires being drawn to the football like a heat-seeking missile, play after play, quarter after quarter, pushing through the agonizing, bone-deep pain of a long, grueling season. This massive number right here, this is the statistical manifestation of the raw intensity that Diomedor Lenoir was just talking about.
But then, the music just completely stops. Everything came crashing down in the worst possible way, on the game's biggest possible stage, Allegiant Stadium, the Super Bowl. This is exactly where we have to slow the pacing down, because the absolute gut-wrenching heartbreak of this specific moment honestly cannot be overstated. After a brutally grueling season, after battling through the gauntlet of the playoffs and finally reaching the mountaintop, Dre Greenlaw wasn't taken down by some vicious blindside block. He wasn't injured in a chaotic, crushing pileup at the goal line. No, he suffered a totally devastating ACL tear simply jogging onto the field. Just jogging. It is without a doubt the cruelest, most surreal irony imaginable. In the sport's absolute most violent arena, a completely non-contact injury brought down the ultimate enforcer. In a matter of seconds, a season of utter dominance, a career playing at a true Pro Bowl level, was just shockingly halted. The stunned silence and the visible shock on that sideline was absolutely palpable. It was a singular moment that changed everything for this franchise. It robbed him of playing in the rest of the championship game, it blatantly robbed the defense of their ultimate bully when they needed him the absolute most, and it sent his career spinning off into an entirely unexpected, incredibly grueling trajectory. And honestly, this brilliantly illustrates the chaotic, wildly unpredictable, and tumultuous reality of an NFL career. Let's trace Greenlaw's incredibly cinematic journey on this timeline. He goes from the absolute peak, the back-to-back 120 tackle dominance in 2022 and 2023, straight into the agonizing, devastating valley of that February 2024 Super Bowl ACL tear. The incredibly grueling rehabilitation process forces a massive change. He momentarily has to leave the franchise, embarking on a short but ultimately defining Rocky Mountain detour with the Denver Broncos during that 2024-2025 stretch. And even there, even while technically in exile, he proves his absolute worth to the entire league. He brought that terrifying, hard-nosed NFC West violence straight to the AFC West. He significantly elevated Sean Payton's defense, acting as the primary catalyst to push that Denver team all the way to the brink, reaching the AFC Championship. But there, he suffered yet another bitter defeat, this time falling short to the New England Patriots. It's just this epic, sprawling arc of exile, of grinding physical recovery in dark, lonely training rooms, of agonizingly close calls in both conferences, and ultimately leading to the 2026 return to the Bay Area. The man has been to the absolute edge. He has faced the ultimate heartbreak on the biggest stages, and now he has finally come home. And he is coming home with some serious unfinished business.
Which brings us squarely to the present moment, rebuilding the defensive core. Listen, Greenlaw's highly anticipated return isn't just happening in a vacuum. It is the final, incredibly crucial puzzle piece in resurrecting a truly terrifying defensive nucleus. When you have a defense that has tasted the Super Bowl, a defense that knows exactly what it takes, the front office's job isn't to just tear it down and reinvent the wheel. No, their job is to find a way to make the established pieces fit back together again, perfectly, while somehow accounting for the brutal wear and tear of the years in between. And to get why this matters, you really have to understand the specific defensive scheme they run here. The 49ers often deploy a wide 9 defensive front. That means the defensive ends split out incredibly wide on the edges. Now, this creates immense, overwhelming pressure on the opposing quarterback, for sure, but it also intentionally leaves massive, highly vulnerable gaps right in the interior of the defensive line. This scheme absolutely, unconditionally requires alien-level linebackers to act as erasers behind that defensive line. Bringing the bully back is entirely about reestablishing that standard of violence in the middle. But an enforcer can't operate entirely alone. He needs his field general. He needs his partner in crime. And that brings us right to the other massive, franchise-altering return. Elite linebacker Fred Warner is back, but this too comes with a harrowing, difficult story of grueling recovery. Warner is returning from a severe right ankle fracture that forced him to brutally sit out the final 11 to 12 weeks of the previous season. I want you to really imagine that defense, operating for nearly 3 entire months without their undisputed captain, operating without the man who wears the green dot on his helmet and acts as the literal defensive quarterback on the field. Without Warner out there, the defense completely lost its elite pre-snap adjustments. They struggled mightily to counter the brilliant, fast-paced audibles of offensive mastermind coaches like Sean McVay. They gave up devastating chunk yardage over the deep middle of the field simply because their unparalleled coverage linebacker was stuck on the sidelines in a walking boot. Now, I want to highlight the sheer immense magnitude of this reunion. The lethal, totally symbiotic combination of Dre Greenlaw and Fred Warner is finally healthy. They are side by side again. This isn't just about plugging in 2 all-pro caliber players. This is about reigniting a synergy that fundamentally alters the geometry of the football field for opposing offenses. When Warner and Greenlaw are out there operating at full capacity, they drastically shrink the middle of the field, they completely, utterly eliminate the inside run game, and they allow the entire secondary to play with ultimate, reckless aggression.
And speaking of that secondary playing with absolute aggression, let's look back at the man who was so incredibly vocal about getting his bully back in the first place. Number 7. This stark, undeniable statistic right here represents Diamondor Lenoir's interceptions across the last 3 seasons. Now, 7 interceptions for a cornerback over a few years might just seem like a solid, respectable number on a stat sheet to the casual fan. But in the intricate, deeply connected context of this specific defense, it is a profound statement of cause and effect. It highlights precisely how linebackers brutalizing the middle of the field leads directly to massive turnovers on the outside. When Greenlaw and Warner violently jam up the middle and completely eliminate the quarterback's quick reads, they force those opposing quarterbacks to panic. The pocket inevitably collapses, the quarterback severely rushes his throwing motion, forcing a late, desperate, off-balance throw to the outside perimeter right into Diamondor Lenoir's waiting trap. Lenoir has quietly but incredibly methodically established himself as a premier, top-tier defensive talent in this league, acting as a silent assassin who just feasts on the forced mistakes generated by the overwhelming pressure up front.
But hey, we all know interceptions only tell half the story when evaluating defensive backs. The true, definitive, unquestionable measure of an elite cornerback is what happens on the hundreds and hundreds of snaps where the ball isn't picked off. The locked-on Diamondor Lenoir allowed only 357 passing yards on his side. Let me really truly contextualize for you how utterly suffocating that number actually is. An average starting NFL cornerback will easily, routinely give up 600 to 700 yards in a modern, pass-heavy regular season. Elite cornerbacks, they might hold that number to 500 yards. Over an extended period, allowing a mere 357 yards means opposing offensive coordinators are sitting in dark rooms, looking at the film, loudly sighing, and actively choosing to cross the entire right side of the field completely off their play sheet. It is an even lower yardage total than he allowed from 2022 to 2024. It definitively shows a player entering his absolute terrifying prime. This metric vividly illustrates that this 2026 49ers defense isn't just angry. And they aren't just blindly relying on the fiery intensity of returning veterans. They're historically, fundamentally effective. They're executing their complex, demanding assignments with cold, calculated precision on the perimeter, while the linebackers bring the hammer in the middle. So let's pull all these fascinating threads together to see the complete, highly daunting picture of this 2026 roster. Look at the brilliant, undeniable juxtaposition of these 2 very distinct identities that are currently forging one unified, terrifying team. On one side of the ledger, we have the new blood on offense. Rookie Dijon Stribling drawing that cautious but deeply, deeply meaningful praise from Brock Purdy. He is bringing reliable, fresh promise to a meticulous, unforgiving system that demands absolute perfection on every single step. And on the exact opposite side of the ball, we have the returning enforcer on defense. Dre Greenlaw, a man overcoming devastating, heartbreaking injuries in a grinding physical stint in Denver, bringing his seasoned, fiery intensity back to a linebacking core that was absolutely desperate to get its bully back. This right here, this is exactly how you forge a complete, dominant, modern NFL contender. It takes the steady, emerging, highly calculated reliability of youth on one side, perfectly balanced, motivated, and protected by the angry, battle-tested muscle of veteran experience on the other. Which leaves us with this final, overarching, incredibly heavy thought. With the bully officially back in the middle of the defense, aggressively setting a violent tone, with Fred Warner returning healthy to brilliantly command the troops, with Lenoir flawlessly, quietly locking down the perimeter, and with new, highly reliable offensive weapons emerging to perfectly support a measured, brilliant, calculating quarterback, Is this the year the 49ers training camp crucible finally creates a diamond? The stakes for this franchise truly couldn't be any higher, and the palpable nervous tension radiating from this training camp absolutely proves it. Every single solitary piece of the complex puzzle appears to be in place, but as we know all too well in this brutal, unforgiving league, the true story is written one violent, beautiful snap at a time. Thank you so much for joining me for this exclusive deep dive explainer on NFL Nexus. Please don't forget to subscribe to the channel, hit that like button on this explainer, and drop a comment down below with your real thoughts on this roster. I really want to know if you guys think they finally have what it takes to cross the ultimate threshold this year. And remember, please support the channel by becoming a member if you enjoyed this deep, tactical dive. I will see you on the next one.